waterproof.
A little tape,
Yep.
wax. In the old days, they used cow shit, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Clay.
clay.
Right. We use masking tape. There's other things.
You got
use
fancy
parafilm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's.
So why wouldn't you just scrape off the brown part to get the green?
What would you do with that then? Like,
So let's do it.
Well,
Let's-
because you'd have a lot more of the cambium exposed as opposed to that.
So
thin little-
we do that to make cuttings. We'll do that.
Right.
Now that is exposed cambium, and you could line up a cut piece there, but when we cut it like this, it's very precise, and we can align things very precisely.
it's sharp and it's straight and there's no wobble in it, so you've got you can have perfect contact.
You could graft that.
So
That's
if I was
possible,
going
but
to
it's
do
rough.
do my fig, what I want to scrape the outside off?
That's a different thing because you're
No, I know
scraping
it's
that
a little
off,
different.
and then it's going to root up along that edge. You're exposing the cambium for rooting in a rough way, and that's okay for rooting, but not so good for grafting. See how rough it is and irregular? See how precise this is?
Yeah, if you
want
have
it
two
perfectly
trees, if you have two branches growing, on two different trees, and you want to grow them together, you could scrape both sides, tape them together.
Tree circus.
Tree circus.
Yeah,
Tree circus,
Yeah,
You
right?
could do
pretty
that.
cool.
That would work. But as far as what we're doing, we're going to demonstrate is a more precise and kind of a more substantial
And
connection.
when you have dissimilar sizes, I'm jumping ahead, but when you
Yeah.
have dissimilar sizes, so your rootstock's really fat and you have a little skinny one, you got to put it over to one side.
If you stick it down the middle, it'll die.
It's not
You
going
know
to be
that,
aligned
you're
with
guaranteed.
You're not going to be aligned with any cambium if it's in the middle, in the desert. You got to
Right.
go over to the shore.
One side or the
One
other.
side or the
Make
other.
up your mind.
So you can see how he chose this side, and this side is like, oh, what's going to happen here? Within a year, it'll be all overgrown and beautiful.
Right.
You don't worry about it. You make sure one side's perfect, and then it's
I'll just add in on this particular one, I left only one bud, and you can see where the
Nice.
burning wound is right here.
Yep.
And so that one bud grew. It did this funny thing where it flowered right
That's
here.
funny.
And I just picked off the little applets right there and kept it growing for the rest of the season.
Uh-huh.
That's what this is, though. You might get mistaken and think I left the scion that length, but I
I was
actually.
wondering
Which
about
you
that.
could.
Which you
know.
could, but then you might have all these side branches that you have to thin out. So I just left one bud.
So you're actually going to have fruit on this thing this year.
Not yeah.
You
and,
could.
And
You
you
need to
know,
make sure what it is.
the roots have grown a little bit. Do you have a rootstock here in there? Yeah, so you can see this is like 1 year of growth. Now this is M111. That's what's that one?
Geneva
So
This is Geneva 890. This is a more vigorous, more
dwarfing.
more dwarfing, but fast off the uptake. It's quick to start.
and good disease resistance on that Geneva.
Yeah,
You need some
this
rootstock.
is a great rootstock. If you guys are looking for rootstock, this one you can plant in an old orchard. You plant this in an old orchard, and it'll stay that big for about 10 years. If you plant this in an old orchard, it'll blast away and grow as if you methyl bromide the whole place. So, it's Geneva 890. Yeah,
And it's for
No,
sale.
that's apple.
and it's for
Yeah.
sale. We
Got
got
for
those
sale.
5
That's
bucks.
apple, right?
That's apple only. Only apples on apples. So you got to know about your compatibility. Apples on apples, cherries on cherries. Some
Right.
things you got more options.
People say, "Oh, I put a pear on my apple."
For a
And I'm
minute.
like, yeah, I've done that a few times. It grows,
Couple years.
and then the wind blows and the thing cracks off, or it puts a fruit on it and it cracks off. It
I
won't make a
also-
durable union.
I also have grafted trees for sale.
Yeah, ready to go. Take them home.
Yeah, get Dave's phone number. He's got a lot of nice trees. How would you sell your trees?
It depends. I want to ask you what you think they were.
Let's make a deal.
I'll be the broker. Come
You
in.
get first dibs on what you want because you
No,
gave me
that's
the sign wood and you taught me everything
There you
about
go.
grafting.
Have at
And you
it.
too, John.
Pay back. Pay back.
Okay.
Reciprocity, you know.
Okay. Well, so first thing I don't know to start with the demo is you have your rootstock and you got to cut it off someplace. And where you cut it off? I've got roots down here. This is all going to be underground. I'll basically plant this tree so that all the roots are below the surface of the soil. So there's the surface of the soil where my hand is, and you really want a little bit of rootstock above ground. You don't want to do your graft down here because as the years go by, you'll be mulching your tree. The soil level tends to creep up, and you don't want to bury your scion stick because the scion stick doesn't have the disease resistance that your rootstock does. It also doesn't have the dwarfing protection. It doesn't have so if you bury the scion stick will root and it will bypass the dwarfing characteristics of the stalk, but it'll also bypass the disease resistance of the stalk, and you'll get exposure to diseases and death that this one wouldn't put you in the line for.
How did you cut off so much of the roots when you were?
Because these are the feeder roots, though, new roots are going to come off from the base here. It's going to be, basically it starts off like this, and it'll do what Dave's did, make a huge cluster of new roots at the base. If you get it in the ground promptly, if you let it sit around in a plastic bag for a while, you'll be able to watch it form a cluster of little white, very brittle little spikes, and when you try to replant that in the ground, they'll break off, and then you have problems. So it's good to kind of not dawdle and get it in the ground, stay someplace stable, plant it, and don't mess with it until the next fall or something if you want to move it. So anyway, cut this thing off, 4 to 10 inches above the ground, and you cut it off so that in some place where you've got a clean, knot-free, bud-free section of rootstock exposed. And you take your scion wood, you want to choose there's a bud on my scion wood, I'm going to put that bud into there. What do you do, John? A 1/4 inch above your bud, and make a cut, a diagonal cut, flip it over. Want to talk a little bit about the knives?
Sure. So the key here is a precision flat cut. And how do you get a flat cut? You need a single bevel. If you have a double beveled knife, you can wander. If you pull on it, it can wiggle.
Like a pocket knife is a double beveled knife. Right. This is cut in a special way. It's got a bevel on this side. It's absolutely flat. It's even concave
like
a little bit on the other side. Right.
A chisel has a big flat edge and then one angle to it, and that's how you can get a really flat cut with it. Same with this. We're pulling the straightest, flattest cut. So when we look at this, we want to see a flat, straight line, because when we slide it in here, it's going to be split, and it's going to be as straight as can be. And so we went straight on straight.
Right. And so if you do like this, that you have that cut on that side.
The curved. We don't want curved cuts. They're beautiful.
How's that look?
It's got to be.
You want a flat plane.
Right. When you try
Exactly.
to fit this into the cleft of your rootstock,
The wedge.
In the wedge, you're going to have air pocket, anywhere there's a low spot. You can have a few places that make contact, but it basically won't have this continuous connection. I've got a piece of
And are
skin.
you always wanting to include a node as part of the slice? Like I noticed in both of those you just cut, you left like.
I left a bud right at the top of my wedge, and a node, like you said.
So you want to cut into one of the nodes?
You cut alongside of it so that you can get your node down into your cleft or very down close to your cleft, so that because there's a higher concentration of carbohydrates around the buds. There's more flesh, there's more growth, there's faster expansion. So that's where your healing is most effective. If you get that in your cleft, you'll get better percentages.
Just even gathering our scions, they're the uppermost growth, the tip of the branches. This last season had leaves on it. So these buds are quite ready to go any direction. They could spur out and make fruit, or they could grow into 6 or 8 foot shoots, depending on how many we leave on there.
As opposed to the bottom ones, what do they do?
On the branch?
Well, yeah, that same stick. That's the end of it. What about the base of it? Are they less?
Yeah, I like to do the middle of the branch if possible.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but even so, just to understand that at the base of above each leaf is a bud that's ready to grow an entire new tree. Does everybody get that? That's the magic of this. With budding, you're using just one of these, or like Dave did, he just trimmed his graft off to one bud.
Yeah, look at the buds on the base of that 1-year-old tree versus the buds that are in the middle. The buds in the middle are nice and plump and ready to go, but the ones like right above the graft, I mean, look at these. Like,
They're
bud
asleep.
right there. Yeah,
These guys are
They're like,
completely gone.
the older these get, the more covered up with bark they are, and the harder they are to come out. But if you cut there, they'd wake up. But look at these; these are plump and ready to go. So
and they get even
those are
fatter
optimal
at
for
the
grafting.
top.
What about that bud at the very top?
Well, that works too.
Some people use that.
Well, no, it's great.
It works.
Some varieties are precocious and they'll flower out the top.
That's true.
And so
Yeah, you don't want to
really
do it
want
on
the
the tip-bearing
flower.
ones.
You'd rather not. But So
We
brush
don't want them to fruit right away because then they'll stall out and stop growing. We want them to get up to a nice size and then spur out.
So when your graft goes, your graft takes, and you get flowers, that's like not a good thing. You want to take the flowers off as soon as you can. After you've got substantial actually leaves, get the flowers off there, get the fruit off there, because if you have a fruit at the end of your new graft, your graft will grow about that much, and you'll have a little
Be a
sour
stump,
fruit
right.
on it. Go buy a piece of fruit if you want a piece of fruit, but don't compromise
Be patient.
this much growth. They say with every pound of fruit, it equals, it basically reduces the growth of the tree 16 inches. So
You want a tree that's strong, able to carry a load of fruit. So don't be greedy the first few years. Let it get a nice, beautiful structure. Knee cut, shoulder, hip cut, shoulder cut. Make it strong.
okay, so what he's saying is that you take this tree and you put it in the ground, you cut it at your knee, you cut it 30 inches, and it'll branch out. You'll get multiple. If you put a scion stick in your stalk and it takes and you left 3 buds on it and all 3 of them branch out, you'll have 3 very closely spaced branches that will be kind of too close together. You want to take 2 of them off. Leave 1 good branch once that graft is going. Don't let a bush happen all congested at the bottom of the tree. Let it grow up like just like Dave Shaw did. That's a beautiful
That's a nice
tree.
whip. That's a
Yeah.
nice whip.
Then you chop it off at 30 inches and it'll start branching like crazy 10 inches below the graft, and you'll have a nice height for all your main scaffolds to get going, and it'll shoot out the top, and then go from there. Go read a book after that.
The mechanics of this, there's a million ways to get cambial contact. There's a book called The Grafter's Handbook, and there's just so many different ways, and some we use different times of the year. This technique, which I don't think we've actually done yet, the cleft, is the simplest and can be used year round, basically. There's other techniques that are budding or where the bark has to be slipping. You can only do in the summer months when it's actively growing, spring to summer.
But the principle is all the same.
But it's aligning the bark, and this is the simplest, easiest, and what we recommend.
Yeah, and I really consider this it's a building block. It's a foundation for a lot of other types of grafting. If you do this same graft, but do it upside down, you put a new rootstock and then cut the rootstock into a wedge and then put a split into your old tree. You can fit that up in there and tie it. You can put a new rootstock on an old tree that's stalled.
You get damage, bark girdling from a bull or a bunny rabbit,
Yeah.
something like that. You can do those bridge grafts. In old trees, these 100-year-old plus trees have big gaping wounds where branches fell off, a lot of rot. They're doing these weavings of 3 or 4 branches one way and 3 or 4 branches the other,
Right, cut
to give them
sections
to
of
hold
wood
them
like
together.
this. 4-foot long sections, 3 foot long, and
Big whips.
spanning them so that you've got like rebar basically.
And it grows and becomes a whole new structure holding itself back together, and that tree might have another 100 years.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to go, but this is basically a foundation. This is the building block. You get this, and you should be able, with this graft, you should be able to get close to 100% success.
Especially with apples and plums.
Okay.
Apples and
Don't
plums.
look at my
start.
apricot record.
Yeah. Or persimmons or peaches.
Yeah.
My God.
So anyway, I'm
I'm
going to
not
start
that
it
good.
again. I've got my knife just nicked into the side of the wood, 1/4 inch above a bud that's facing my face. I'm holding my knife like this. This is caveman table manners. You've got your knife and your stick, and this is like knife and fork. And the blade's facing you, and your bud is facing you. And you take those and you cross them like this, hold them against your belly so that they're stable. This is your foundation, your platform is your torso, and then you get that knife started into the bark. And I do it pretty perpendicular. If you want to get really technical about it, it looks like a cross, right? But when I make my cut, I slide the knife sideways so it's really diagonal. So I'm really kind of scoring ahead of my cut all the way across. You can go really slow, you can go really fast, and I'm scoring a line across, and it's perfectly straight, really long. And then I do the same thing, get it in there, long score ahead of it, really slow. Got a really long thing, cut the end of it off because that's wiggly, trim the bottom because it wasn't very good, and then once I've got that,
Can I add to that?
yes.
So with his right hand, with his wrist, he's keeping it stable. The only thing he's moving is the knife. You shouldn't be, if your arms aren't secure, then you get a lot of different angles potentially going on.
Here-
So
here-
it's just more stable and safe. It's a lot safer, and I found that when I learned that technique, it helped a lot. So, and another thing is when they're looking down on the blade, what he's looking at from his point of view is to see if that's straight, a straight plane.
This is what it looks like when we're looking down on top of it. It's looking like this. We're looking straight down on it. And this technique I like. I tuck my elbow into the hollow of my waist, right in there. This
Lock
is
it
way
in,
more
kinda.
stable.
Lock
It's more
it in.
stable.
Yeah, it's not floating
Here's
around.
my chi center, right? This is my chi center right here. I'm locked there.
Is that your fourth chakra?
It's 4.5. 4.5. And this is where I'm just pulling the stick.
Right.
I'm not even moving that knife. I'm pulling the stick. That's safe.
Or vice versa. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I see
yeah.
what you mean. It's,
Yeah, I mean, you do a little bit of both.
Yeah, it's a-
but
only
it's all
gets
right
better.
in here.
But-
I'm not like, whoa.
yeah, there's a lot of people who are out there like,
No, stop
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
you're not whittling at
Yeah.
all. It's the opposite of whittling.
and exactly, you whittle like this, but you think about it. When you got this cut, you've got no foundation. This arm's wiggling. This arm's wiggling.
Gotta be locked
You got to be a
in.
master to be able.
And I've been to a lot of other grafting classes before you guys, and they weren't that specific, and there were always somebody who cut their finger. So.
right.
We don't allow that in our classes. Not allowed.
Okay, so I've gotten ahead of us a little bit. So what I did is I took that cut, that sign that's tapered from the top to bottom. It's also tapered from front to back. If you can see, it's kind of a long shot for some of you people. The front is a little wider than the back.
let me do
The
one.
back's skinny. So what I did that if I had the back thicker than the front's thicker, wider, the back's narrow, so that it's a little bit shaped like this, tapered, so I have maximum contact in the front, no contact in the middle. If I had it reversed, so I had maximum contact in the middle, I'd have no contact in the front. And so I basically bridge my cleft wide open, and this would be floating in the air, and that's what counts. If you don't have contact in your cambium layer, the thing's gonna die. So I've messed around with this enough. I cut down 1.25 inches or something like that, yeah, and then get the wood in there, stick that down 1 inch, and the split will travel as you put the piece of wood down in there. So you put a piece of tape around the bottom. That holds the split so that it doesn't just split down and stay loose. So that way, once this is tight, you can push that thing in to the point where you can hear it. It starts to have so much tension and compression against the wood. And you want to line them up, use your thumb to line them up, use your feel, and you can make that thing just, so it's even. Yeah, and remember, you're lining up the inside of the bark with the inside of the bark. Just keep that in mind if you have really thick bark on your stalk. It has to be in a little bit more, but something like that.
Everybody see those?
This should be.
So you can see how it's not perfect on each side, and the
Sure.
side that's
Let me
longest
close
got
it
put
up.
on the outside, and the side that's the shortest got buried in the middle. Does that make sense?
My wedge, the front of my cut, the side with the bud face is broader, so that it makes contact.
You're the
with
second
the
person that's
outside.
mentioned that.
It's thinner on the inside in the middle, so it doesn't.
If
You
I'm
don't risk
putting it at too
bridging,
much of an
opening your
angle, I know that
cleft,
that's too
so
far
that
in
you
and that's too
reduce
far out.
contact on the outside. You want, so the place you want the
I
contact,
have
you
confidence
leave that
with the
wider,
thinness of these
so
two
it
barks being
touches,
so
and then that
similar.
won't touch.
It's not a
If it's
problem.
the other way around, you'll mess you up.
If I had different thickness barks, I
No,
might do that.
you don't want anything in there.
With apples and pears, get them near each other, they'll grow.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, good. Good to know.
Then you wrap it up. Another thing I'll mention, he's wrapping them up now. Oh, some old timers swear by that.
Well, I don't know. Maybe there's something to that.
I can't.
I'm afraid to do that.
So
Not with my
another
spin.
thing I'll mention here that Freddie has done also that I want to make sure you see, is that the depth of this insertion maintains what I call little bunny ears on the sides, or a little church window, right? See that little green arch? That's important. If you shove that past there, what's going to happen is that will heal down below, and this will increase in diameter and push out these corners and they'll never properly heal over, and you'll have little dead wooden corners or shoulders sticking out. You know, in the 80s they had those pads on the shoulders. It's just not
trees
happening.
that look like that.
Yeah, I'm telling you. So what you want to do is, by leaving just 1/8 of an inch of green,
Callus tissue.
callus tissue will flow over it like wax and heal over the top of those, and it will embrace it and overwhelm it like a lava flow, like wax. And it'll be a beautiful, it'll be just like you see here on David's.
It'll heal in faster.
You need that little arch of green. That's a tip right there. That's worth the price of admission, just that little tip. So wrapping it up,
Yeah. So
you mentioned all the different masking tape.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So this is the point where I'm pretty much, that graft is pretty complete. Now it's just waterproofing it.
How do you waterproof yours?
Okay. So this is with masking tape. It's a little bit sketchy as far as it's not the most waterproof thing in the world. You know, it is somewhat soluble, and so I'm wrapping with pretty good tension around the front and a little bit looser on the back. It's breaking out on the bud, but that's okay. I've wrapped it up above the shoulder of my graft, 3/8 of an inch or something, and I just wrap it around there. And if you leave it like that, that graft, 100% failure rate. There's just no way that'll live, because water will trickle down, it'll get in this thing, open it up, form a cup, and everything will rot in there, so it'll die. So the only way to make a masking tape graft live is to create a little waterproof boot over the top. And there, exactly. It's a little gator, and you make sure it's wrinkle free and very tight on the front. I mean on the top, and then overlapping on the bottom, so the water will flow down the stem. And if it
Like
has
you're
no,
making a roof.
if it has no wrinkle here to get in, it will flow right over the top and down, and that's completely waterproof. From this point, I've got a bud down here, I've got a bud here. That's 2 buds, that's enough. Cut it off 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch above the bud. Don't go closer than that. And then I make a cylinder of masking tape over the top, half below the top, half above the top, and then crimp it. And that's a seal on the top. And then you've got
Nice.
alternative method. The traditional method is to use tar or wax, and wrap this in tape, but then tar this and tar that. And if you're doing one tree, that's fine. Or if you have a grafting crew where you put one guy with a tar bucket and you can carry the tape, so you stay clean, and he ends up at the end of the day covered with tar, that works too. But if you're going to do it yourself and you have a lot of grafts, one roll of tape on your wrist, your knife and your clippers, that's all you need. Just really simple and clean. And I'm a clean freak. Anyway, that's what I have to say.
So you don't need paraffin or anything?
Yeah, parafilm also works, but I don't use parafilm. You can use parafilm. So. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, anyone, or
Is it the same for branches?
for what?
Branches?
Yeah. I mean, branches should be treated just like a rootstock, pretty much.